This is another little adapter for the Psion Organiser 2. This is a speech adapter, so this can actually make the sounds of human speech using this IC here. It works on allophones, which are the basic building blocks of speech. This is definitely a prototype. The PCB had the basic circuit, which you can find on the internet, but unfortunately, as you can see on the other side, I made a bit of a mess of the footprint of that IC and put a 14-pin IC footprint down instead of a 16-pin, which means I've soldered the first 7 pins down to the footprint and the rest are done with wires. And there's a few other components that I left off, which it turns out means that it doesn't work too well, or indeed at all. The rest of it is just sort of minor things. This is a ground wire that I've got from my scope, and there was also the footprint for the headphone socket. The holes weren't big enough, which is a classic fault when you're doing manual PCB layout, but for me that was the footprint for that part, didn't actually have the right holes in it. So that's all been sorted now, and it does actually work. So when I turn it on, the code itself has got a setting which means that after a couple of seconds it will read out what's on the screen. So I'll do that. It'll turn on, it's loaded, and then it'll say it. So that's it. You can also programmatically write procedures to send speech. So I've got one here that just says hello over and over again. Oh, or not, because it's on the other data pack. And so on. So you can build up whatever you want to say using these allophones. And yeah, it does display after 2 seconds whatever's on the screen. We'll do the prog menu now. So catches me out occasionally, that does, and by default that actually comes, yeah, like that. It comes up turned on by default. There's a ROM there, speech, which you can go into, and it's got various settings, and you can go down here to video and turn that off and then exit, and now it won't do the screen reading, which is a bit better, I think. So at the moment this is running using a salvaged 8 ohm speaker from an old telephone system. Because of that, it's 8 ohms. The current draw, when you power this thing from the USB here, I've got a standard circuit that I use, that actually cuts out when this is speaking. Let's see, I haven't got a long enough cable to demonstrate that, which is a bit of a problem. If you run on headphones, which you can do here, it disconnects that speaker, and you can actually hear the speech through the headphone, and it powers itself here permanently. So it is just the current draw. I mean, 8 ohms on a 5-volt supply is quite a current draw. The battery is fine powering it, it's just that this cuts out, so that is one minor sort of issue. This circuit here is just powering the VB, the battery supply for the top slot, so it's taking over when the battery voltage is lower than the voltage that this is supplying, which is 10.5 volts. Now most of the time that'll be true, because this battery I've got, which is a lithium 9 volt, that actually supplies at the moment about 7.5–8 volts. So most of the time that supply is actually powering the entire setup, which is sort of fine. I would have thought that it could manage the current that's involved, but I think just the current draw when it turns on causes it some issues. It does power other than that, so it means you can't actually operate it just off the USB. You have to have a battery as the backup when the supply drops a bit. The ROM is in the standard 256K ROM, so there's 8 images all the same in this setup. And the other thing that's interesting is there is actually a click when the power supply is switched on and off. you get a click on the speaker, which is due to the amplifier starting up, because the top slot is powered only when the code decides to power it, which in the menus is when it's scanning for the ROM. The original, I think, also has a similar sort of click. In a way it's got to, because of the way the code works. It actually powers the speech unit down. Now you could power it off the VB of the organiser and have a regulator on there, but I'm not really sure that it's worth doing that. And that would mean you've got current draw then all the time, which would mean you're flattening your battery. You've got this speaker on all the time, and really, I don't know if it's actually, is it that bad? Difficult to tell really. Let's turn the video speech back on. Yeah, so it's not massively obtrusive. Because it's starting to speak at the beginning when the click occurs. But anyway, so the next step for this is to fix all these problems, make a new board up, and then build one of those up, check it all works. The chips here, these are quite expensive. These are about £10 each. You can still get them, but that does mean that they're by far and away the most expensive component on this board. But they are genuine and they do work.